Welcome to the Female Disruptors Virtual Summit. My name is Lisa Beyer. I'm your host, and I am happy that you joined us today. If this is your first session, last session, live session, or recorded, I promise you this is going to be an amazing session. I have Sarah Evans here as my guest.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Lisa. You have really done an amazing job putting this all together. I can't even fathom the undertaking.
Yes, it's definitely been exciting and a lot and well worth it. So we're being change agents this year, female disruptors, and you're one of them. And we met, I think, in 2007 or something like that on Twitter. And we've been moving the PR tech side and innovation and strategy forward. And now we went from Web 2.0 in PR, now we're doing Web 3.0. And I know that you're going to be leading the way. And you were kind enough to write the foreword of my first edition of Social PR Secrets back in the day.
Probably pre-kids. I wonder what I would say now.
Right? Yeah, you signed it. Lauren signed it, the illustrator. So I still have, this is one of the originals.
So cool.
Yeah, so today I'm excited to hear you share your point of view on the next generation of tech and PR and the give. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. And if I forgot anything, well, right now you have Sevens PR and your agency, I think, is like in a massive scale growth mode. And congrats on that. And you are definitely an innovator and a female disruptor in PR.
Thank you. I think it's even humbling coming up with the topic of this talk. It's hard to look back and say, oh, I'm not the current generation in the workforce right now. I still feel, youthful and excited, and the journey's still very new. But when I actually take time to sit and reflect, I realize how much has changed. When I first started in the PR industry, we were still sending facsimiles to newsrooms of press releases. We were using a ruler to measure the front page of newspapers to look for ad equivalency, which is a completely outdated metric in our industry. So knowing that those two things alone, our entire industry has changed. So with that means the way I run my business, the way I communicate has changed, the way I engage with our contractors and employees has completely changed. The way we report has completely changed. How we're actually doing the work has changed. So next gen communications applies to all of those facets. And I feel very lucky, and much like you, our team has almost always been remote, decentralized, international, pre-COVID. I will say that because of COVID, it expedited the amount of workforce we had access to internationally. So when we looked at how are we communicating as a team or group, it means being mindful of all the diversity and cultures that are part of our team, the way we integrate Slack and Google Suite and all of the tools that we use. I'm now under the assumption when I'm working with folks that they just have this inherent knowledge on how to use those things. My own children, when they had to do remote learning last year and part of this year, I kept telling them the skill set they're getting using these remote tools, like learning how to use the cloud and folders and documents and archive and saving nomenclature, all of these things. I said, that's a core skill set you will use in your job, and you don't realize how valuable that can potentially be. And so I'm just fascinated watching all the things we have to know, in addition to planning for, Web3 and metaverse and how we're going to live, work, and play in different worlds.
Yeah, definitely. And I totally agree. Like, we didn't grow up the way that our kids are growing up, and definitely digital natives. And we had to, as things came out, and became available. I'm going to put both of us in the same category. We were very early adapters in the PR industry, and maybe it just, in general, that we were like, okay, like now we have this, and our lives become more efficient, our productivity, our work lives. We can communicate, we can, pitch an editor via email, which, like, at one point, like with me at least, that was novel. Like, that was like, ooh, she's on email, I'm on email. I'm getting direct communication with this person because she's like, in the future. So that was like a way to, like, rise above the clutter and the distractions. And, it's like every year we're like, in PR, it's like so massively cluttered, and there's so many distractions, and it's worse and it's better. Technology has made it better and worse. So it's like we're always trying a way to like rise to the top and like get noticed for our clients and ourselves. And what are some other examples of what you've seen transition over the past, there's a lot that's changed if we look back 13 years ago, but what has changed even the past 2 to 5 years is incredible. So I think like, it's really like, I feel we're going at lightning speed right now compared to like our 13 years of progress.
You just brought up a good point. And I was actually just laughing. I thought anything symbolic at the time of COVID, it's my kid's punching bag that's back here. If you get angry, you have to go hit it. It's still leaning to the side from this morning. I didn't even notice it was back there. Things that have changed. So you said a reporter contacting them via email. We are now very intentional with trying to find out, does a reporter need to be contacted via Signal, WhatsApp, Telegram, Twitter DM, LinkedIn, email, text message? As we build relationships, some of the formats change, the preferences change. Reporters are putting their preferences in their Twitter bios where you have to proactively go check and then pitch them like that. I'd say that's a big differentiator, because as a PR person, you also have to centralize all of this communication, and you have to understand all of these preferences and how you're doing outreach. And the same goes for clients. We'll hire, as we're onboarding new clients, we'll say, are you comfortable communicating via Slack? And we have some people that say, no, we do Telegram only, or we have a WhatsApp group. So using and finding tools that will help aggregate all these comms vehicles in a way so we don't miss task delegation, that we're still up to date on comms, that our entire team's confident using it. And so I think that's just a quick reflection on what companies of all sizes are experiencing. Many large organizations are using Microsoft Teams in places where they can centralize all of these tools in a much more expensive and privacy protected platform. So I guess that would be my quick glance at the last few years.
Yes. And now we're, like going at lightning speed into, what's being called the metaverse. And it's really just the next gen of the internet. And how are we going to apply our PR strategy now into that, which it's exciting. And I see some of the people on the panel here. So, Kennedy, she's, I don't think she's on right now, but some of her peers are. And she's majoring in communications, and they have a magazine, a student-run magazine at FAU that there's like, I think 8 different schools have. It's called Strike, and it's a fashion and culture magazine, student-run. So they're getting this amazing experience on, building relationships and creating content, editorial content, and looking at it from our point of view, like we're pitching that and we're trying to get placement. And, like, I just feel like the media today, whether you're on the editorial side, I think that you're going to get valuable experience if you want to get into public relations. Like, I wish that I had more experience on the journalism side and then got into PR, because you can be so much more effective. And that, I think, is something that really hasn't changed. What is your opinion on that?
I think that there is unlimited potential today. And I don't know if it's just my makeup or what, but I feel like even as a late teens, early 20s something, as I got into the workforce and all these tools were available, I've always been hungry to learn and create, whether or not it was in my job title, whether or not I was compensated for it, whether or not I was doing an internship. I thought, if it's there, I'm just going to create it, use it, and figure out what happens next. And I think, Lisa, you've always been like that also, which is how we really discovered one another. And I do get questions a lot of times from new grads or current students on what they can do. And I'm really looking for the hunger and the excitement to explore what's happening and ideate. For example, like my son the other night said, oh, I'm going to run over to my friend's house because he's recording a YouTube tutorial on this one thing. And he said, I'm a subject matter expert. So I'll go give my voice on that. And I thought, these kids are actually doing something right now, and they're learning how to create, they're planning for content. The kid's house he was going to didn't realize he was functioning as a producer, finding the best source and, bringing him in to contribute. So when I do a lot of fact finding questions or meet with these folks, that's what I'm looking for. I'm trying to ask them questions to pull out what they inherently already have the talent to do. and then look at that from a professional standpoint. How do you market that? How do you package that together? But you don't have to wait for your first job. You don't have to have that catch-22 where you apply for something that's an entry-level job that requires 5 to 7 years of experience, because you can already be getting it.
Definitely. And, one of your titles, I don't know if you still use it, but the digital correspondent, being like the brand journalist and acting, not having to wait for another journalist to do your story, that you're kind of the correspondent. Like that is still so relevant. And so, taking it into the future, you can be the digital metaverse correspondent in your metaverse, be a reporter in your metaverse world, like your digital world. So having that journalistic mentality, and that's, kind of what I was getting at too with Strike, is that if they're working on editorial and then they go out into the world and they want to do any type of marketing or PR or media, like they've already got that, how to get the story out or how to tell the story. And you can't really learn that in college and PR classes.
It's true. I mean, it's getting out there and doing. You can learn very valuable fundamentals in the academic setting, but then there's the application, and you need both parts in order to be successful. And I find that if you're looking at that paid, earned, shared, owned model as a PR person, you're always thinking in those 4 realms and what you can create. And I think I did an interview in PR Week a few weeks ago just about changing media relations, and we talked about doing media briefings in the metaverse and different opportunities. If you can't go do desk side briefings anymore, some ways you could leverage Web3 to connect with media stakeholders and influencers, and that's something that the opportunities are limitless. You watching can be the people who are creating the next thing. I have at least 2 clients who we meet in a virtual world for our weekly all hands calls. It's just something a little bit more fun, and they wanted to create a way to engage outside of Zoom fatigue, which is, very prevalent. But I like that people are thinking outside the box to keep employees and contractors and folks just happier.
Totally. And this next question, what is the power of the give and why is it important? The power of the give, really, that's something that has not changed. I mean, that's always been a staple when it comes to not just PR, but technology isn't going to replace the power of the give.
No, I had to insert this because this is my own personal key narrative, and it's exactly what you're doing with Female Disruptors, about giving back and finding a way, no matter what you're doing, to build up those around you. I feel like if we're doing anything around female empowerment and disrupting, we have to remember who we bring to the table with us, who's our +1, someone that doesn't look, sound, act just like us, that brings a diverse viewpoint. And I try to live that with everything that I do in work and life. And it helps me, it forces me to be more well-rounded, sensitive, aware. And even for our team, just as an example, we have a heavily female skewed team, and we do quarterly meetings to talk about their own personal brands. So we can say, what are your goals? Yes, you're doing this now, but you're not going to do this forever. Maybe you will, and I'd be that lucky. But what are your goals? What are your side hustles? What do you want to accomplish? And we use our team to build up the other people on the team. And that's how we can give. It doesn't always have to be a monetary contribution. It can be time, it can be access, and opportunity.
And Sarah, that's very innovative. I don't think that you can really get that type of support in a lot of brands, small and large. Unfortunately, I mean, there's exceptions for sure, but I think that's really, the direction that we're trying to make these changes, whether it's making the changes for equal pay or, stopping harassment and the power struggles that are happening between, I've been using this all day, the Matt Lauers.
I've got my own stories, believe me.
Yeah. So, what is your kind of like take on that, on what can we do we're not looking for perfection, but we're looking for improvement and getting better each day and not going backwards. The pandemic has really set women back between burnout and ageism. And, ageism now is like hitting millennials. 40-year-olds are having problems, getting turned down. So it's insane. And, men are not having a problem, really.
I feel it. Without going too in depth, there are just certain moments that happened early on in my career that hit me in a very specific way when I think about them. And when I started growing this agency, I thought anybody who works with me, I will protect with every being that I have, because that was the biggest issue for me, even being part of a large organization where some of these very blatant sexual harassment moments happened. There wasn't that level of protection, even up to the CEO, where they would almost laugh it off and say, oh, you're young and you don't know any better yet. And you think, oh, yes, maybe that's what it is. When I'm older, this will be totally acceptable, which it's not. And your culture matters. If you build a culture where that's acceptable, it becomes acceptable. If you work with clients who view that as acceptable, it becomes acceptable. So I don't view any of it as acceptable. And so it starts here. And then you hope this next generation coming up, they see these behaviors. And if 3 of the 15 people on our team go start their own agencies, maybe they take that culture feeling with them, and it keeps going and spreading.
Part of the mission too with Female Disruptors and the virtual summit is that we are learning from Gen Z. Gen Z is, open to learning from millennials and boomers and vice versa. Like there's so much to learn from each other. And there's been, for the most part, this like stay in your lane. Like, it's like millennials against each generation, and they're competing. And really, we have so much to learn. Like, women in their 50s and 60s have so much wisdom. We just announced Suzanne Summers won the Female Disruptors Lifetime Achievement Award because of her advocacy in women's health. And, that's not where she started. She started as, in Three's Company, as an actress, but she's really, made it her mission to be a change agent. And she's helping, us learn about these things. So how do you see it? Like, what are you learning from, let's say, Gen Z, and what are you teaching them?
So here's what I think across the generational mix, without stereotyping or pigeonholing anyone. I feel like with the Gen Z side of things, there's a vibrancy and a light that hasn't been put out yet. And so I thrive on that. I selfishly want that. I want to be surrounded by that. I remember being a new professional, and I would get teased, but in a way that wasn't offensive, for not having the light kicked out of me yet. I'd come up with ideas and just anything goes, and brainstorming and ideation. And that was really powerful. And I find when I surround myself with people who are like that, generationally or not, it's very contagious, and I love that. I also love the idea of generations who have come before me who have precedents and best practice and the fundamentals that they can teach and reinforce, because I think the combination of those two things are really powerful, and we see it in our own work. This is not hypothetical. This is just the way it is. And when you're the boss, when you are, as you know, Lisa, it can be very lonely because you isolate, because there's compensation involved. You're not necessarily, even if you want to be friends with everyone on your team, which I do, it doesn't always function that way. So I always think, what can I give and get? And a lot of it comes down to energy.
Totally. So whoever is listening here today, please feel free to add a question if you want in the chat. We have about like 7 more minutes left. And I have one more question, Sarah. How do you walk the walk and hold yourself accountable?
Well, I think part of it comes down to what I said by
walk the talk.
All of it. I walk, I talk, but I can't chew gum and walk. I hold the meetings with our team. So we do the branding session, and when a team member comes to me, one of our core values is humanity. And when someone comes to me with something personal, whether it's a personal issue, or many times they'll come to me and say, hey, I have this idea. I really thought about doing X, Y, or Z. I harness our team around it and treat it like a potential client, because I want to build up their idea. I don't want to kill it. And I know that I have many different passions and projects, and I'd love mind meld around them. So number 1, walking the talk, forcing to do those regular meetings around personal branding. Number 2, joining in the celebration of new ideas with our team. And number three, having brutal talks. Usually my husband's my go-to when I'm not perfect. So when I realize I'm not doing something well, how can I change it or identify a deficiency and then find a way to fix it?
Love it, love it. And you're a mom, you're an entrepreneur, you're in the PR world, which is, you know, definitely 24/7. You're a partner, sister,
All of it.
daughter, all these things, right? So how do you keep it all together? What is your system that you're using to kind of, you know, stay balanced?
Okay, so the brutal answer is that I don't always have it figured out. But my husband and I have really, over the past 3 to 4 years, made a commitment to routine and regiment that we feel really helps us become the best people. And we outlined like, what are our must-haves every day? What are the things that really keep us healthy mentally, spiritually, physically? For us, it's exercise. Lisa, for you might be yoga. That falls under that exercise umbrella. And exercise to us means two different things for my husband and I. Like he's out lifting a bajillion pounds of weight and running. But we're very routine and scheduled. And it's like, don't lay in bed and read on your phone when you wake up. We get up and we start fresh. And we've just put some different things in our lives. And I realized this routine has really helped us keep it together. Shutting off at a certain time, if I can, in the evening for work things is always a goal. And spending lots of times with my kids. I feel really awful that during a large part of COVID, when they were here because schools were shut down, having to tell them, no, I'm on a call. No, I'm doing this. No, I feel like they heard no way too many times. And I want to be available to them. I want them to know their importance. So I've worked on saying yes as much as I can for their time and attention, not yes to everything they want.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And right before we started the recording, I just wanted to maybe give some like, what are some like things that people wouldn't realize happen like behind the scenes of PR and what it looks like. It's not the glamorous, you know, Sex and the City cocktails and events. You're on deadline and.
I've left my chair 3 times today, twice used to eat a really big breakfast lunch that I smushed together. Only because we have several launches happening at once, and it is a lot of fun, and it's not always this intense. Like obviously I couldn't sustain that, but I was laughing right before you came on. I was like, there's a major TV station who has one of our clients coming on tomorrow that we just found out. They're like, do you have this B-roll? And I'm looking for an agency. Do you have this B-roll? Who's got the B-roll? Because it's a new company. We have to get it over to the TV production because they run at 5 a.m. Eastern. It just, you know, just little things that pop up all the time. But thank goodness we have a great team across all of our accounts, but I always jump in to try to do as much as I can because I have a pretty good gauge on like what their capacity is. So if I can help with some of those really urgent last minute things that come in, I try to take them on. But that's just symptomatic of the quick pings here and there, and then you have to prioritize.
Yeah. So what are some last words of wisdom that you can leave to female disruptors that are looking to enter the PR and marketing field?
Well, number one, tell me your advice. I always feel like I have more to share once I learn from others. And number two, reach out to anyone who has your dream job, especially during COVID, especially if you're a current student, especially if you're a new grad. There's no time better than right now to leverage the fact like, oh, it's me. I'd like to interview you about you. It's hard for people, especially in PR, to not talk about themselves. So you can reach out and ask them questions, build the relationship without making an ask. And I think that's one of the best ways to do it, and build up experience any way you can. If you don't have an internship or job right now, treat a new Instagram channel that you create as your content portfolio. If you're into things that are, you know, visual aesthetics, write mock press releases for nonprofits and send them to them and let them use them. Just find any way you can to do work. I just believe there's always a way.
Yeah, the part about the Instagram, that's the advice that I give as well. Just set up, like, don't have your Instagram account just be about you. Every picture is a selfie, or every picture is a different pose of you. And just creating that portfolio account and creating, you know, the look that you want and the brand that you want and who do you want to be known for. I think writing as much as possible, like start a blog, start writing, contributing articles to different publications. That's why I love the strike opportunity, where you're writing editorial and captions and running social media for a publication. Like just being in the publication business or working for a TV station and being behind the scenes and seeing like what reporters have to go through. And then if you then find out if you really want to be on the other end of them, which, the example you gave is you are. I mean, it's very fulfilling, when you get that story, whenever that story comes out and, you get the Google alert that something was in USA Today, or,
I still scream. I still like run around. I'm like, oh my God,
yeah.
So exciting to me.
It is. So it all becomes worth it. But up until that point, it's like, you're chasing something that you don't know for sure is going to happen. Unlike advertising, where you can place an ad, the size, everything you have control over, and you can say, okay, this is the ad and here's how it did, here are the results. In PR, we don't have that luxury. And that's why it's definitely a balancing act. You have to love it.
You do. And I will just tell you one other thing to add to that. Even if you're practicing writing right now or putting content up, you will have a time you look back and you're like, that's so cringeworthy what I wrote and did 10 years ago or 12 years ago or 7 years ago, but it still will get you to the moment you're at that you can celebrate. It'll help you grow. There's stuff I wrote years ago. I'm like, I can't believe I thought that or said that, but it's inconsequential now, but it helped me get to where I'm at now.
I say that about when I'm looking at the first edition.
But you
How
did
that even get published?
You made something.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Totally. Well, we are about out of time. Sarah, thank you so much. If anybody wants to follow Sarah, follow her on Twitter. I'm going to say PR Sarah Evans, and connect with her on LinkedIn. And she is a wealth she's always helping and always giving. So that's why you're here.
Thank you, Lisa. Tremendous job. And thanks, everyone.
Thank you for being a female disruptor.
Bye.
Bye.